Books are gay, don't you know? The Supreme Court might say books are gay, don't you know, Helen? Don't you know that books are gay, Helen?
Reading is gay, everyone. Well, according to a group of my kid ain't gonna be no homosexual parents who took the issue with diverse education being shared in classrooms, took their hatred all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, mind you, they don't want to ban books. They just want their children to know that queer people exist. And they don't want people to know queer people. Oh my God. They don't want their children to know that queer people exist. And we prefer if their child could just opt out of story time where teachers may read a book about two gay penguins raising a baby chick or whatever, which happens. Don't tell the straights, because really that's how we get you. It's the moral outcry against diversity. The fact that the Supreme Court is willing to hear this case should have us all worried when it comes to teaching kindness and differences to our youth is being overshadowed by parental rights and religion affecting public education. This article is named Supreme Court takes up parents' bid to opt out of LGBTQ content in elementary schools. This comes from NBC News, written by Lawrence Harley on January 17, 2025. Phoebe, I'm sure you got opinions.
I have many opinions. I have lots of opinions. I have gay opinions. I have not so gay opinions. I have gay books. I have not so gay books. I have books by dictators. I have books by anarchists. I have books by communists. I have books by fascists. I have books on objectivism, and I have books written by friends of mine which are all about trans people and trans kids and trans parents. And my goodness, if the states like these people want us to do, saw my book collection, knock them down with a feather is all I can say. But this isn't what we're really getting at here. What's being missed here is the groups that are undertaking this are minorities in and of themselves in a world where minorities are not the most liked at the moment, shall we say. So they have decided that they're going to knock on the door of let's be discriminatory. Little do they know that this, quote, religious freedom lark is going to come back to bite them when, I don't know, the religious freedom says, well, we don't really like you either, so you'll be next. And this is where the whole stream starts. You may dislike the person who married the person that you dislike, but that doesn't mean you get to interfere and say that your children get to grow up ignorant. Because that ignorance will allow the ignorance against you to come back and allow your ignorant now children, because of your ignorance and your creation of the ignorant children, to get them discriminated against, you discriminated against. And what we should be doing is the exact opposite. The groups that have decided to take this up are minority groups, Muslim groups, Eastern Orthodox Christians. These are not the kinds of people that you should be going, oh yes, let's go and have these groups pander to us, because these kinds of individuals are not the most open-minded. But little do they know that there are even less open-minded people out there that will happily throw them under the bus too, Aaron.
Yeah, apparently it violates your religious freedom now if somebody else is different than you. Who knew? You know, if apparently just gay people existing violates other people's religious freedoms.
Well, I'm sorry. It violates my freedom of expression that these religious people exist now. You see, it's my freedom of expression that is now being violated upon. You see,
I mean, exactly. This is the whole problem with their argument is just because something exists that you don't agree with doesn't mean you get to pretend that it doesn't exist. It exists. And I mean, I understand that the country is changing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but the country is becoming more secular. The country is becoming less religious. Poll after poll is demonstrating that. And so when that is happening around you and you continue to be a religious person and you see the country around you getting less religious, that can be scary, right? That can be scary when the people around you stop behaving the way that they used to, that they believe different things that you believe. It may seem like you're gonna be the loser in this war, or what they consider to be a war. But the fact is that there's not going to be a loser here. That the what these people are fighting against is what they should be championing. They should be looking for more inclusion, because as fewer and fewer people become religious, they're going to become the minority. I mean, what is it, 2050s or 2060s? Christians will be minority in the United States based on current statistics, and so they need to get instead of trying to fight against other minorities, they should really be trying to strengthen minority protections.
So here's the next question: what does it matter, Helen? What does it matter?
Okay, so my problem, like this is, if you want to have your kid opt out of fucking story time, okay. But the thing is though, like these does have extenuating circumstances, because like if a teacher is going to read a book about, like Marlon Brando, about a gay bunny living in the White House, which just says that there's a gay bunny, like, it's just a children's story. And then little Timmy, whose parents are like, I don't want my kid to know that gay people exist. He has to leave the classroom. Everybody's going to know. And that kid's like, look at the bigot. Look at the kid that's going to be raised a bigot. So it also singles out these kids too. And we were all children once, and your social group and being teased and ostracized in any way, it empowers the group to recognize that you are the outsider. And also, too, it does a disservice to these kids, because I'm sorry, I would like children to learn to be more kind and more inclusive to people that aren't like them. I got that education. I consider myself a very nice person, and I think that other children don't. You don't have to, like, just because your child hears about gay people doesn't make them gay. Guess what? My son is cis and straight. Has a trans older sibling, and I'm queer.
Oh, well, poor you.
Weird, huh? It's almost like it doesn't
Welcome
matter.
to the 21st century. But
yeah,
you make a valid point here. Children are shits towards other
they're
children.
Assholes. Have you met
Children
kids?
are
They're
complete
assholes.
little shits to each other. They don't care that mummy or daddy or whoever has a moral objection to this, that, and the other. No, they're just going to be a little shit to the kid that's walked out of the classroom.
Right.
Which is why the Supreme Court said all state-sponsored prayer in school is a no. Right. Even if there's an opt-out, because you are discriminating against the kids that walk out of the classroom. And this is what people don't understand. You can't have a public education system that is cherry pick and choose. What next? I don't believe in the Earth being 100 million years old or 2 billion years old or however old the Earth is. Therefore, I'm going to opt my children out of geography lessons. No. The Earth is 6,000 years old. You're teaching plate tectonics. That is against my this, that, and the other. Therefore, you may not go to geography classes. You teaching the Big Bang? No, can't go to physics classes. Where does this end with all this parental rights bullshit? The problem that parents that bring these lawsuits have is they forget the fundamentals of being a parent here. They believe that their job as a parent is to create a facsimile of themselves. What you actually want to do, you want to create an independent, healthy, well-adjusted individual who can stand on their own 2 feet and get on in the world, not be a facsimile of you. And that's what's the problem here, Aaron. Do you have facsimiles of you, or do you have individuals around you?
You don't want facsimiles of me around. One of me in the world is one more than there probably needs to be honest. No, I totally agree with you on this point. Your job as a parent is not to create copies of yourself. It is to create people that can create individuals, human beings that know who they are and that can provide for themselves and take care of themselves as they grow older. Eventually, your kids are going to learn that there are gay people in the world. Eventually, your kids are going to learn that there are Muslims in the world. Whatever group you fear, eventually your kids are going to learn that group exists. And do you want to teach your kids to be fearful and bigoted and hatred against things that they don't understand? Or do you want to give your kids the knowledge and understanding of how the world is and how it works, and so they're not scared, so they're not unhappy, because being fearful leads to being unhappy and leads to bad things, in my opinion.
So the Supreme Court, in its infinite wisdom, has decided to take up another junk case. It took up Mifepristone last year, which was a junk case that it had no choice but to take up. And it's probably had no choice but to take up this junk case. Do you think that the Supreme Court is being forced to take up these cases because lower court judges are not doing their jobs properly and are allowing junk cases to get further and further and further through the system when they should just be throwing them out in the first place, Helen?
Yes and no. I think I do think that a lot of this is politically motivated because and it gets attention. But I also think that there's these smaller courts that just don't want to deal with this. I think that it's a combination of motivated reasoning that we don't, I don't want to deal with this, because this is something that we don't have time to debate. We have bigger fish to fry. Like, especially if you're like a smaller court and you have local politics that you have to deal with, that you're just like, oh my God, like I just pass this on. But I also think it's politically motivated, because also as well, if you are these smaller courts and maybe you don't want to be the thing to rule on this case because you don't want to cause a stink. So bring it to the Supreme Court, let them decide. And then you can be like, hands off. Like, I kind of agree with them, but like, hands off, man, I don't want to be involved. So it can be, yes and no at the same time. I don't think the Supreme Court should be listening to this, because we have secular education for a reason. That's why we learned about things like the Holocaust and about slavery when we were growing up, because it was very important to learn about those things so you don't grow up to be a butthead.
Aren't those things just a symptom of irrelevant wokeness that's being forced upon our children, and this is just another manifestation of it, Helen? Isn't this just more wokeness, more indoctrination of our children, and people just being forced to accept things that just will never affect them in any way, shape, or form?
No, because your poor kid, I'm sorry. What if your kid grows up to be, queer? What are you going to do then? Like, no amount of pretending, like if someone sees your kids are going to be exposed to queer people. It's going to happen. They live in the world. They have the internet, they have television, they have friends. They are not an island unto themselves. And the fact that also, if you want to send your child to a private school where they deny that, us as queer people exist, fine, send your kid there. You don't get to do that in public education. And if you don't want your child to learn about diverse groups of people, don't send them to public school. Why are you trying to force that standard? And you want to opt the kid out now. Great. Now you're teaching your kid they're the other. It's kind of having that backfire effect. And the fact that you're part of a minority religion, like you're part of the Islamic religion, and you're doing this, it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Aaron,
I kind of love the irony about it.
Aaron,
yeah, they don't want this. Hold on. They don't want this in school because they know deep down they don't have a leg to stand on, right? They cannot defend their bigotry. And so they want it out of schools so that they don't have to confront their bigotry. Because it's out of school, they can continue to teach the bad stuff. But if it's in schools, gay people exist, trans people exist, other races exist, then they have to actively teach their kids, oh, no, that we have to hate those people. We have to not like those people. And they have to confront that. So of course they don't want it in schools.
So I hear from the pair of you that you're just part of you're just part of the woke minority now. That's becoming the woke majority now. That's trying to take over. These are just good old family values that we should just not be interfering with how parents raise their children, right, Aaron? We shouldn't be interfering with how parents raise their children. And if a parent says, look, school, I don't agree with this. It goes against my religion, and I want to raise my children in a specific way that doesn't agree with this. Aren't we just interfering with how parents are raising their children through the long arm of the state in the mandated schools that they have to go from 8 till 3 every day of the week?
Then don't put them in. If you don't like what the schools are teaching, then don't put them in a school. Or get your friends together and start a school of your own. Homeschool them. You have choices. You have options. Or when they come home, teach them what you want to teach them that contradicts what they're teaching in school. But when we come together as a society and we say, we have decided it is beneficial to society that we educate our kids. That we educate our kids for 12 years, that they get a high school diploma, and then they go out into the world. We do this. Most countries in the world do this, especially first world countries. There's value in educating your kids, and so when you bring these people together, you have to figure out what can we all agree to teach each other, right? So what can we agree? Well, how about we use evidence and things that have evidence for them, and we'll teach that to our kids. Things that can be shown to comport with reality. We can teach true things. Well, what can't we do that with? Well, we can't do that with religion, right? There's no evidence. There's no for religion. There's so many religions. Which one's true?
Evidence.
So that has to stay out of schools.
But you haven't proved that it doesn't exist.
Well, I haven't proved that
but
Bigfoot
you haven't
doesn't
proved
exist.
it doesn't exist. Therefore,
Well,
where
we haven't proved that Bigfoot doesn't exist.
Negative.
And we don't teach it in school. We don't teach that that there's universe farting fairies on the other side of the galaxy. But we don't teach.
Well, why not?
But how do you know there's not universe of farting
I don't.
on the other side of the galaxy?
How
do you know, Aaron?
So I don't advocate for teaching it in schools, right?
I've got the evidence in the books, though. The the Bible,
the books,
the Quran, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, and so on. They're all the evidence there. That's all the evidence you need.
It's not evidence.
Sure.
Are we really having this debate? Those are claims, not evidence. Those are claims.
And this is the point I'm getting at. And this is the point I'm getting at here. This is the point I'm getting at here. These are all claims made by these groups that these individuals are X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, and go against it. There's nothing to substantiate anything to back up what they're saying apart from propaganda and nonsense. For anybody that's been watching this has been taking me seriously, you haven't seen me before on this show, you haven't watched this show before, and you shouldn't be taking me as holding those positions that I just espoused about, oh, you should teach all this, that, and that, because that's not how the world works. The world works based on me, Helen, Aaron, you the listener, the producer, the people who'll be on the show next week and the people who were on the show last week, actually sitting down and going, what actually makes sense here? I am skeptical of religion because it does not make sense. I am skeptical of these claims by these parents because they are nothing but nonsense. And I am skeptical of judges who rule in favor of them as having any understanding of the law, and they're not doing their jobs properly. Skepticism is the thing that you should be teaching your children, not ignorance. And teaching your children ignorance by taking them out of things that make you uncomfortable, not necessarily your children uncomfortable, but you uncomfortable, is the most ridiculous and nonsensical thing that you can choose to do in this world. Creating ignorance and creating nonsense is not how we should be doing. I'm skeptical of you and your positions on that because it doesn't make any sense to a rational, open-minded individual who wants to embrace everybody as another human being without going, well, you've got this skin color, you've got this gender identity, you've got this sexual orientation, you've got this disability or ability, and so on and so on. This is what we have got to this point in the United States of America. The wealthiest country on earth is tying itself in knots over things that most of the rest of the world have realized is a heap of shit. And if you believe that these kinds of court cases are a heap of shit, tell us that they're a heap of shit. But if you agree with these kinds of court cases, tell us that too. If you want to hear us talk about other things which have been heaps of shit, click here.